Good evening and thank you for joining us for the Wednesday's edition of the Regional News. We begin with Trinidad. A 16-year-old schoolboy was among 3 killed on Tuesday. Darshan Ramnath was gunned down opposite his home in St. Augustine, while another man named Gino, age unknown, was found a short distance away in the same community. 2 others in the same area were injured. It is believed that gunmen had fled Warner Trace, St. Augustine, seconds after shooting one of his neighbors. Darshan rushed out of his home and ran to where his grandmother had been cooking to make sure she was safe. However, this act of love would cost Ramnath his life as he was confronted by one of the gunmen who ran him down and shot him multiple times. His body was found in Gregory's Lane. The teenager, a Form 5 student of St. Augustine Secondary School, was due to celebrate his birthday on February 1st. Residents said around 3 p.m., a gray Toyota Corolla car turned onto Warner Trace and stopped in the middle of the road where 4 gunmen exited and began shooting at the group of people standing in front of someone's home. The group scattered when the shooting began, and Gino was found dead a short while after. 2 other men, one of whom is visually impaired, were injured during the incident and was subsequently taken to the hospital. Acting on information relating to the getaway car, officers were able to apprehend 3 suspects at 5 Rivers, Aruca, and they allegedly recovered the 4 firearms used in the shooting. The search for a 4th man continued on Tuesday night. We now turn our attention to news from Peru. Thousands of protesters took to the streets of Peru's capital and were met with volleys of tear gas and pellets amid clashes with security forces just hours after President Dina Boluarte called for a truce in almost 2 months of protests. The anti-government protest Tuesday was the largest and the most violent since last Thursday, when large groups of people, many from remote Andean regions, descended on the capital to demand Boluarte's resignation, immediate elections, and the dissolution of Congress. Before last week, most of the large anti-government protests that followed the ouster of President Pedro Castillo took place in remote regions of Peru, largely in the country's south, exposing deep division between residents of the capital and the long-neglected countryside. The crisis that has sparked Peru's worst political violence in more than 2 decades began when Castillo, Peru's first leader from a rural Andean background, tried to short-circuit the 3rd impeachment proceeding of his young administration by ordering Congress dissolved on December 7. Lawmakers impeached him instead. The National Police arrested him before he could find sanctuary, and Boluarte, who was his vice president, was sworn in. Since then, 56 people have died amid the unrest involving Castillo supporters, 45 of whom died in direct clashes with security forces, according to Peru's ombudsman. None of the deaths have been in Lima. We now close with news from Colombia. Colombia's human rights watchdog is reporting that 215 human rights advocates were killed last year, the highest death toll since a peace accord was signed with leftist rebels in 2016. Jose Quinterio, who founded the MANA Survivors Association, was one of the last victims of 2022. He was assassinated in the street in December. His group supported families of people who disappeared during more than 5 decades of armed conflict in Colombia. The Ombudsman Office says the murders coincide with places that are strategically important to organized crime groups involved in drug trafficking, illegal mining, and contraband. The government of Gustavo Petro, Colombia's first ever leftist president, has proposed in his total peace policy to initiate peace talks with armed groups such as the ELN and to reach out to FARC descendants who refused to sign the peace accord, as well as the Gulf Clan cartel with whom the government announced a truce. Ombudsman Carlos Camargo expressed hope that such talks would lead to a reduction in actions against leaders of human rights groups. I'm RENATTA and thank you for watching. Back to you, Travis.